It's Philosophy Talk.
Are we all here?
Oh, just too bad for those that aren't. Time, tide, and trolley wait for no man. Let her go, motorman.
There's a trolley coming that will run over 12 children if you don't throw the switch, but only one if you do.
I'll throw the switch.
And if you have to push a man into the trolley's path to stop it?
Well, that's a tough one.
Attention passengers, the train has been temporarily delayed because of a discarded couch on the tracks.
Does it seem right to you to push a fat man off the bridge to stop the trolley from running over 12 other people?
You're going to push that button and stop this train!
If you don't do anything, can you really do anything wrong?
Our guest is Thomas Cathcart, author of The Trolley Problem, or Would You Throw the Fat Guy Off the Bridge? A Philosophical Conundrum.
When is it wrong to save a life?
We've only got a few minutes!
We got all the time in the world.
Lessons from the Trolley Problem. Coming up on Philosophy Talk. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence. I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. We're coming to you from the studios of KALW in San Francisco.
Continuing conversations that begin at Philosopher's Corner at Stanford, where Ken and I teach philosophy.
Today, we're looking at some lessons from the trolley problem, and we're asking, when is it wrong to save a life?
When is it wrong to save a life? Well, now that's a philosophical question. But Ken, remind me what this has to do with trolleys. Why is this form of transportation morally and philosophically special?
Well, intrinsically, they're not special morally and philosophically, but they happen to be connected to a series of thought experiments developed by Philippa Foot and Judith Jarvis Thompson some years ago. They used trolleys to make certain moral points.
Thought experiments, my favorite kind, the best kind of experiment ever invented. You don't need fancy lab equipment. You can't spill acid all over your trousers. You don't have to go through a human subjects committee. You don't need a grant. You just need a working brain. And it's okay to try them at home.
Well, I like thought experiments too, John. And the classic version of the trolley thought experiment is due to Judith Jarvis Thompson. Now, here's how it goes. You happen to be standing by a switch on a trolley line where the trolley is run away. You can see that if it continues on its track, it's going to run over 5 adorable, innocent children. Now, you can do something. You can throw the switch and divert the trolley to the side track. But here's the problem. There's a man who has chosen to fall asleep for some reason on the track. You have no time to wake him up. Here's the question. What do? Do you flip the switch or not?
Well, I'd throw the switch. I'm sure most people would. That's the right thing to do, or it seems like it to me. It's better to save 5, even at the cost of killing a man that would have otherwise survived.
So you agree with most people, it seems. Many people have the moral intuition that the right thing to do is to cause one man to die rather than letting 5 children die. That's how you're thinking of it, right?
I guess I do. I have a moral intuition to that effect.
Well, let's reverse the situation just a little bit. Suppose the man's asleep on the main track. The runaway trolley's going to run him over and kill him. The children are having a picnic on the side track. Now, you can save the man's life by diverting the train. What do you do?
Well, obviously, I wouldn't do it. It's pretty much the same principle, even more straightforward. Let the one guy die if saving him is going to cost 5 lives.
But now, so you see where the title of our show comes in. The trolley problem suggests a case and where it's wrong to save a life.
Well, that's well and good, but it raises an issue. Why are my intuitions really important? I'm just one person. Frankly, I'm not particularly trained in moral philosophy. I barely know the difference between a rule utilitarian and a slide rule.
Well, not many people know what a slide rule is anymore. But, John, here's the point. First of all, you're not alone. Many, many people exposed to this thought experiment share your intuitions. And why does that matter? It matters because moral intuitions are analogous to experimental results in the physical sciences. There are data. There are starting points. Physicists find laws to explain the results of experiments and other physical observations. Moral philosophers find principles and theories that explain our moral intuitions.
But my moral intuitions, or even moral intuitions of people like me, that's just the way our untutored, inexpert brains react to these situations. The way my brain reacts is the result of some combination of evolution, plus what my parents told me and my occasional attendance at Sunday school. I don't see that any of these is a significant source of philosophical knowledge about moral principles. I mean, intuitively, desks and chairs are solid, but physics tells us they're mostly empty space. Intuitively, there are more numbers than there are just the even numbers. But set theory tells us this is not so.
Well, look,
our intuitions just often lead us astray.
Well, I agree that intuitions can lead us astray, and maybe moral theory can correct our common sense intuitions, maybe the way physics does, but you got to start somewhere, and these thought experiments and their intuitions, they give us good places to start.
Well, so far, the trolley problems we've looked at are leading me down the track to utilitarianism, but I wonder if that's the wrong track with respect to moral theory. The defense of utilitarianism, greatest good for the greatest number, can't be that simple.
Well, we've just looked at the simplest of cases. There are lots of variations on the trolley problem, lots, zillions of them, and we're going to explore some of them in depth. And you know what? Some of them lead in quite different tracks away from utilitarianism.
Our roving philosophical reporter, Caitlin Esch, talked to scientists who actually study what happens in the brains of people when the scientists pose variations of the trolley problem. She files this report.
Joshua Green directs the Moral Cognition Lab at Harvard's Psychology Department. He describes the scenarios.
A trolley is headed towards 5 people, and they're going to die if you don't do anything, but you can hit a switch that will turn the trolley onto a sidetrack. Unfortunately, there's a person on the sidetrack, and that person will be killed if you turn the trolley. Is it okay to turn the trolley away from the 5 and onto the 1? Case number 2, known as the footbridge case, the trolley is again headed towards 5 people. They'll be killed if you don't do anything. You're on this footbridge over the tracks in between the trolley and the 5. And the only way you can save those 5 people is to push this large person who's standing next to you off of the footbridge and onto the tracks. And the idea is that the person's body will stop the trolley and it'll save the 5.
I would never throw the guy next to me down off the bridge.
I think that's a really hard choice. One is more passive and one is more active, and I think I would have a hard time with the more active choice.
I wouldn't intervene because I would just let nature take its course.
I think I would flip the switch, but I can't say if I would push the larger person.
Well, I'm a big guy, so I would probably jump down there. I wouldn't push anybody off. I would jump down. I'd be the guy that does that, whatever you got to do to trip a switch or get in the way.
The thought is that it's a kind of gut reaction, an emotional response that's making you say, no, don't push the guy off the footbridge. And it's more conscious, deliberate, cost-benefit reasoning that's making you say, well, it's better to save more lives.
Harvard professor Joshua Green has looked at brain scans of people making these moral decisions. Green says deciding whether to pull the switch or push a guy onto the tracks triggers an emotional response in the amygdala,
which is a part of our ancient mammalian emotional system, which is a kind of early warning device that lets us know when there are things in the environment that we need to attend to and that might have some kind of personal significance, especially if they're dangerous. The amygdala is closely connected to a part of the brain called the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which seems to be a general integration hub for emotional signals that bear on decision-making.
If that part of the brain is damaged, those gut reactions don't make it into the decision. Researchers can also manipulate responses with drugs. For example, give someone an SSRI like citalopram, and their emotional response increases. They're more likely to go with their gut reactions. But give someone an anti-anxiety drug like lorazepam, and they're less likely to go with a gut emotional response.
All aboard for Night Train!
So back to that guy on the footbridge. Only about 30% of people say it's okay to push a person onto the tracks. But if you ask the question in a slightly different way and say, okay, well, you don't have to push him, but he's standing on a trap door and you have to flip a switch and release him onto the tracks. Is that okay?
Now that number of people who will say yes doubles to about 60%. So a big chunk of this is the difference between pushing with your hands or harming more indirectly by hitting a switch that opens a trap door.
Apparently, people don't usually want to use personal force against one another, but Harvard's Joshua Green found most people don't realize they're making moral decisions based on this impulse. And this idea extends to real-life situations like physician-assisted suicide or drone warfare.
I think it does suggest that it doesn't feel as bad to drop a bomb from 10,000 feet than it does to slit somebody's throat with a knife. I mean, you can feel that just hearing me say those words, right?
So what kind of a person are you? Do you make moral decisions based on gut reactions, or do you think it through? Green says the gut reaction is kind of like an automatic setting on a camera. It's mostly good, but sometimes it needs to be overridden. We have gut reactions against hurting people, and that's a good thing. But then again, there are situations where physically harming someone can actually promote the greater good. For Philosophy Talk, I'm Caitlin Esch.
Thanks, Caitlin, for that interesting trolley ride through the neighborhoods of our brains. I'm John Perry. With me is my fellow Stanford philosopher, Ken Taylor.
And today we're asking about the trolley problem. When is it wrong to save a life? We're joined now by Thomas Cathcart. He's author of The Trolley Problem, or Would You Throw the Fat Guy Off the Bridge? A Philosophical Conundrum. Tom, welcome back to Philosophy Talk.
Hi, gentlemen. Good to be here.
Tom, last time you were on our show, we talked about philosophical humor. You had some really good jokes. Now, the trolley problem may be a bit weird, but the problems it poses are really no laughing matter. What led you to this topic?
Well, interestingly enough, I had not heard of the trolley problem from the philosophical literature that you guys cited, Judith Jarvis Thomson, Philippa Foot. I only became aware of it after it had gone viral on YouTube in the lecture by a Harvard guy named Michael Sandel in a government lecture called Justice. And in the first lecture, he cites the trolley problem, and all of a sudden, the course had always been considered a popular course. And by popular, they meant it had to be held in Sanders Theater, which seats 1,100 people. Well, very shortly after this lecture went up on YouTube, it had 4.4 million hits, sort of redefining what we mean by a popular course. So that was my first exposure to the trolley problem. And he laid out both the switch scenario and the footbridge scenario, and that got my mind clicking. Like most people, I would have said yes to the switch, no to the fat man, but I had to wrestle with why.
So Tom, your reactions and mine and the ones in Caitlin's piece are all pretty standard. The original thing is throw the switch, save the 5 children at the cost of killing the man, push the man off the footbridge. No, or at least that's hard. It seems right to throw the switch, kill the sleeping man, and save the children. It seems wrong or not clearly right to put the fat man off the bridge. Now, I should say, disclaimer, this fat man trope comes from the ancient history of this problem. It's not a piece of gratuitous political incorrectness by us. Right. So at any rate, our reactions to the two cases, the footbridge case and the original case, seem inconsistent. But why do expert moral philosophers care about the inconsistent moral intuitions of untrained moral agents like me and the subjects of the experiment? Why are these things important?
Well, I think one reason they're important is that even after the trained philosopher looks at them, it's very tricky. The distinction is very, very tricky. And you can, rely on the psychological and evolutionary scientific stuff if you want. But at some point, you have to decide whether or not that's the way you're going to make decisions, or if you're going to go against your psychological predisposition. So it's a tricky matter for anybody.
But Tom, part of what John is getting at, part of why it's tricky, and I think we're going to have to dig into it, is that in some sense, the two scenarios are the same. 5 people die or 1 people die, and you have a choice between 5 dying or 1 dying, and we make different judgments. That's weird. Isn't that just weird?
It's very strange. Yeah, it really is. And some people, people give all kinds of different answers. Caitlin mentioned one of them, the physical use of physical force in the footbridge instance, and the lack of that in the other instance, the trap door, which makes the footbridge more like the switch. Some people say there's already a threat. that's present in the switch scenario, and all you're doing is diverting it, but you're creating a new threat, the threat of being a fat guy on a bridge in the second scenario. Neither one of those really does it for me. The decision maker that sort of makes most sense to me is, again, an ancient piece of reasoning from St. Thomas Aquinas back in the 13th century.
Tom, we're going to dig into all these deep things. We just need to. There's a wealth of things to think about in this little simple thought experiment. You're listening to Philosophy Talk. Today, we're digging in, and that's the right word, digging in to the trolley problem with our guest, Tom Cathcart, author of The Trolley Problem, or Would You Throw the Fat Guy Off the Bridge? A Philosophical Conundrum.
What are your intuitions? Are you like me? Would you throw the switch, but really not push the fat man, or at least feel really bad about it? Is there some theory that can account for these intuitions and make them consistent and rational?
Trolleys, bridges, and morality. Plus your calls and emails when Philosophy Talk continues.
Chug, chug, chug went the motor. Bump, bump, bump went the brake. Thump, thump, thump went my heartstrings. When he smiled, I could feel the car shake.
Clang, clang, clang went the trolley. No, no, no went the fat man. This is Philosophy Talk. I'm John Perry. This is a program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence. I'm Ken Taylor, and we're asking, when is it wrong to save a life? Lessons from the Trolley Problem.
Our guest is Thomas Cathcart. He's the author of The Trolley Problem, or Would You Throw the Fat Guy Off the Bridge? A Philosophical Conundrum.
So, Thomas, I want to go back to what we were talking about at the just before the break. Look, many people have the intuition, you have the intuition, John has the intuition, that we throw the switch to save the children and let the sleeping man die when it's, barreling toward the man. That seems to suggest a kind of utilitarian principle. But if that's the principle, then it should be straightforward. Just straightforward, by the same logic, to push the guy off the bridge, to sacrifice the one to save the five. But as we've seen, most people don't feel that way. So, look, you add this all up, what's it add up to? It seems like people's intuitions are just inconsistent mess.
I think that might be right. Yeah. I think intuitions change. People's intuitions change over time. Sometimes for sociological reasons, probably any one of us 25 years ago, if we'd been asked our intuition about marriage, we would have said something about a man and a woman, and we no longer have that intuition. So consequently, I think intuitions bump up against each other. I think they're a good starting place for moral philosophy, but they're certainly not the last word.
But come on, let's try and rescue it. Let's see if we can find a way first. Before we diss them completely, I'd like to find a way to make these intuitions consistent. Some principle that says you should flip the switch, but shouldn't push the fat man, the large man.
Weren't you going to find a principle in Aquinas just before the break?
I was, and I will. Thomas came up with something called the principle of double effect. And what that says is that sometimes an action has both a good consequence and a bad consequence. And it's okay sometimes to do that action, even though it causes something that otherwise would be morally prohibited. And so I think Thomas, if trolleys had been around in his day, would have said something like this, that the guy who pulls the switch is okay in doing that because he's permitting the bad effect, but he's not intending it. And if he could get the good effect, saving the five, without doing the bad effect, he would do that. And that's in contrast to the guy on the bridge. The guy on the bridge is going to throw the fat man, and he needs the fat man to die. He needs to hope that the fat man doesn't get off the bridge, because the fat man actually has to die if it's going to save the five people.
So the one guy is using the fat man in order to save. I mean, he's like using the fat man as a tool, as a means to an end.
Yeah.
But you know what, though? This sounds like a principle that would justify, killing a lot of civilians with a drone because you're trying to get the terrorist who lives among them, but you're not really trying to kill the civilians. It seems like it would let you off the hook for that kind of thing. Would that principle let you off the hook for that kind of thing?
I think it would if you took it as an absolute. I think, for me, it does make a difference between the two scenarios. Do I think the principle of double effect is an absolute? No, I don't really. I think you can dream up scenarios. For example, a drone strike. Unless you're absolutely against drones, most of us can probably think of an instance where it would be justifiable, to risk the lives or even cause the end of the life of innocent civilians, if the military target was, sufficiently important. So I don't think you can take any of these things as an absolute. I think they all bump up against each other, and in the end, everybody has to sort them out and see how they fall.
So the principle of double effect at its heart says, look, it's not just the results of what you do that's important. It's the plan that you have in mind for getting those results. So it pushes us inner a little bit Kantian. In the one case, you have a plan, throw the switch so the train doesn't run over the 5 children. Running over the man, not part of your plan, just something that happens as a result of your plan. In the other case, your plan is push the man off the bridge, train runs over him and kills him, that stops it so it doesn't kill the children. So the man's dying is part of your plan. Now, it doesn't seem that we have to take that to be an absolute, to say that it's always wrong to cause a person to die. Couldn't we just say, well, in general, it's worse to achieve the result if you have to cause a person to die rather than if you just let them die?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the way you put that. Yeah. I think, Rawls talked about coming to some kind of reflective equilibrium. Our judgments bump up against each other, our general principles bump up against each other, but also reality bumps up against all of our principles, and individual cases sometimes don't fit the general rules we have for ourselves. And so we all have to come into some kind of reflective equilibrium where we sort of mix and match and move stuff around until it feels like the best balance we can get.
So I wonder if, so let's go back to our psychologist from Caitlin's report. It's fascinating to me that in recent years, the trolley problem has become the stuff of psychological research. I mean, some philosophers thinking about abortion, Philip Foot, I think, back in 1957 or something like that, or was it Elizabeth? One of them. The first thing was back in 1957, thinking about abortion and principle of double effect. Now psychologists are all about hooking brains up to scanners and seeing how they think about this stuff. And this result that I think it was Joshua Green talked about, where people seem to the people have a visceral negative reaction to actively taking a step that will cause people pain or death or anything like that, but more abstract principles. Now, is that an implementation in our psychology of the principle of double effect, or is it just a different kind of explanation entirely? That it's just we kind of have these hardwired impulses. I mean, what do you think this psychological stuff shows about these abstract principles? Are they just two different kinds of explanations, or what?
That's the way it strikes me, yeah, that they're two different things. As you guys know, there's an even grosser scenario, which is sort of like pushing the fat man off the bridge, except most people have an even stronger intuition about it, and that's that you're a trauma surgeon who's been called into the emergency room. There's been a big pileup out on the freeway, and 6 patients are brought into your emergency room, and so you triage them, and you discover the first guy needs a kidney transplant, and the second guy needs another kidney transplant, third guy needs a heart transplant, fourth guy needs a liver, and the fifth guy needs a lung, and you're thinking, where in the world am I going to get the organs to transplant into all these patients? When you take a look at the 6th patient, and it turns out he's been sent there for observation. 35-year-old guy, he's in perfect health, and he doesn't seem to have suffered any effects from the pileup. So the obvious question is, do you take him into the operating room, harvest all his organs, and then plant them in these other 5 guys? So yeah, when you hear that kind of scenario, your intuitive alarm goes off in a way that it doesn't with the switch, I think.
Yeah. So have I been sucked into a principle that's really terrible, that it's okay to push the man off the bridge, then it's probably okay to harvest the organs. Oh, dear.
Yeah, I mean, the principles would seem to apply, but the visceral reaction differs. This is complicated stuff. We'd love to hear what you think about this complicated stuff. And Keith in San Francisco is on the line. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, Keith.
Yes, glad to be back. Long-time listener, occasional caller. My question is this. Let us say, in both cases, everything is the same with one slight difference. Instead of knowing that if you do A, you will have result B, what if you don't know? What if you don't know if what you will be doing will work? You do know that it will kill someone, but you don't know if it will actually save people.
Well, that's a good question, Keith. So, Tom, you got some thoughts about that? We make this all probabilistic and indeterminate, and does it change the reasoning, and does it change the reactions?
I think it does, yeah. It introduces a whole nother level of complexity into the question. And all of, these scenarios assume that instantaneously you're going to make this probabilistic calculation and come up with the right answer, which, of course, is absurd. But, yeah, even if you had all the time in the world to figure this out, throw probability in here, and you've got a whole nother level of uncertainty.
Suppose, for example, that the guy that's asleep on the sidetrack is large but not obese. It's not clear he will stop the train. And as a matter of fact, the sidetrack loops around and then comes back the same way onto the main track. So if he doesn't stop the train, it's just going to continue around the loop and then come back and kill the 5 children. Now what are you going to do, right? I mean, maybe you can save the 5 children by killing the man, but maybe what you're going to do is just kill the man in addition to the 5 children. And are our intuitions very clear about that?
Mine certainly are. Some people react to these cases. The majority intuition in the case where you can flip the switch and they'll go down the track with only one will die, fat man or no, only one will die. The majority intuition is you flip the switch. But some people think you should just let nature take its course. You shouldn't interfere in this. I mean, that's a kind of minority but persistent intuition in these things. What do you make of that intuition? What is that intuition about?
That's the one that often gets expressed in medical circles as, who are you to play God?
Exactly.
And I think that's a legitimate question. If you just let history take its course, then your hands are clean, I guess, except that obviously you haven't intervened to save the 5 children. But many people, and as you say, it's a minority, but many people say, well, my intuition is that I have no business playing God. And what do I know that these 5 people's lives are really greater than the one person? Who am I to judge that?
That's important because actually the original version of the trolley problem was the conductor's barreling down the track and the train's gone out and he sees the kids on the one side and the large person on the other side. And people thought that, well, the conductor has a responsibility to make the least bad thing happen. That's in his institutional authority. And then you take it and make it a passive observer. And the question is whether people's intuition changed from, I'm the conductor driving this train, I'm just a passive observer. And some people's intuitions do change and some people's don't.
Change.
So it's kind of a complicated morass of possibilities. Don't you think?
Yeah, actually, that's exactly what I think. Yeah. It's interesting that, all of these kind of sub-scenarios, like the trap door for the fat man, the one that you just cited, as you say, if some people that changes their mind, some people it doesn't change their mind. That's why I think we can't just go on intuition alone. We have to have some way of bumping them up against each other and hopefully coming up with a principle, but the principle might bump up against another principle, so the end of your sorting is nowhere in sight, really.
Pat in San Francisco is on the line. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, Pat.
Hi. I listened to your scenarios, and I would take the third option.
Which is?
To take a threat assessment and either remove the individuals from the track or mount the trolley and stop them myself. That would be the same as the person, the soldier, who drops on a live hand grenade to protect his buddies. or the firemen
Yeah.
who run into a burning building while everybody's running out.
So you're a very altruistic person. You want, if somebody has to be sacrificed, you're darn well certain it's going to be you rather than you sacrificing somebody else. Is that it?
If that neutralizes the threat, yes.
That's the reaction of one of the experimental subjects who said he was a fat guy, so he'd just jump.
He would just jump, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
heroic.
I guess the reason that the scenario posits a fat guy is to take the self-sacrifice option off the table and to ask the question of what you would do if it were just another person and 5 other people.
Well, right. In some ways, that's the morally easier route, is sacrifice yourself. I mean, morally more commendable. And there's no moral dilemma involved in self-sacrifice. Not really. I mean, so, Pat, I don't know if you're still with us, but you're saying, I'm going to take the morally easier route. But we're not going to let you take the morally easier route. We're going to the morally demanding route, and we're going to see what your moral machinery does in this morally demanding situation. And see, this is why thought experiments are cool, because you couldn't do this in real life, but you can do it in thought experiments out the wazoo.
Although there was a real-life experiment like this on 9/11, the people on the plane where they had heard over their cell phones that what was going on with the underplanes, and they knew it was a choice between taking over and probably getting themselves killed or getting a lot of people killed in whatever building this plane was going to run into. Then you can ask the question, well, if you're an air traffic controller with powers they probably don't have, where you can make a plane crash, wouldn't that have been the right thing to do, to make that plane crash rather than let it go on into a building?
So, Tom, this raises a question. So we're talking about thought experiments, and I love thought experiments. I'm a philosopher. They're our home turf. But is there any, I mean, there are real-life situations that put people in these trolley-like situations. Is there any correlation, do you know, between how people behave in real-life trolley situations? You can't put them in them experimentally, but just life gives them to you, and how they say they would behave when they're put in a laboratory.
That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. My guess would be that probably in a real situation, people do behave differently. But do I know that? No, I don't. But that would be an interesting thing to study, I think.
So we need an anthropologist who goes around studying not just the psychology of trolley thinking, but the anthropology of real-life trolley situations.
So the questions, I mean, if you look at that interesting datum that they had, that 30% would push the fat man off the bridge, but 60% would push a button that opened a trap door. So they're not reacting to the difference between causing and letting happen, because in both cases they're causing the guy to fall. So it looks like what they're reacting to is the fat guy might slug him
right,
if they try to push him off the bridge, right? Not sure that's a morally relevant difference. So what people actually do is decided by a lot of things in addition to their feeling about what's right. At least that's certainly the case with me.
And that's certainly true. And the roving report talked about how it's easier to drop a bomb from 30,000 feet on a bunch of people than to actually, kill them with your bare hands. And evolution seems to have something to do with that. But you're listening to Philosophy Talk. We're digging into the trolley problem with Tom Cathcart, author of The Trolley Problem, or Would You Throw the Fat Guy Off the Bridge?
Now we know more than we thought we would, imagine, about trolley problems. But assuming our job isn't throwing switches for the trolley company, can this help us with any real-world decisions? Or, as one of our emailers says, are they just bad short fiction stories that have no real relevance?
Trolley, intuitions, and real-life problems when Philosophy Talk continues.
Stop that train.
Stop that train, unless your moral intuitions tell you otherwise. I'm John Perry. This is Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything
except your intelligence. I'm Ken Taylor. Our guest is Tom Cathcart, author of The Trolley Problem, or Would You Throw the Fat Guy Off the Bridge? A Philosophical Conundrum. Now, I want to say, we're using this word fat, and I know some people may find it offensive, but that refers back to the history of this problem and how it's described. We're kind of quoting, not using, and the morally relevant property in this case is that this guy is more likely to stop the train, is massive enough to stop the train. You need a massive thing to stop a barreling train. That's where it came from.
Yes, we're not responsible for the trope, although if you notice a little humor in my voice, you can hold me responsible for that.
Actually, when I turned in the first draft of the book, the editors at Workman, the publisher, took out all the references to fat and made them portly or heavy set or whatever, large. But then we all realized that in the history, as you guys said, of this problem, he's known as the fat man. So we thought, well, nobody's even going to know what we're talking about unless we call him the fat man. So
and of course, there's a homage there to the old Humphrey Bogart movies with Sidney Greenstreet, who was the fat man. But we digress. Tom, suppose I have thought through the trolley problem and know what I think is right and wrong and all the variations and why. Now, is this going to help me in real-life situations or help me give advice in real-life situations particularly? I mean, how about the case of abortion? That was one of the things that led to the trolley in the first place.
Right.
I think the history of it is that Anscombe made the distinction between killing and letting die and kind of revivified that old distinction in modern philosophy. And then Philip Foot had the driver, and he had to choose between the 1 and the 5. But in his case, he was in command either way. And then Judith Jarvis Thompson said, how about if you're just throwing the switch? So how does it all add up back to the original abortion problem? Ken has a point.
Yeah, I want to just, before we get on to just tell me, how does this apply to why is the abortion problem a trolley problem? Why, in thinking about abortion, did these distinguished philosophers invent this trolley problem?
Okay. Actually, the Catholic Church's position on abortion is very nuanced, more than we realize. Obviously, their principle is that you may not take the life of the fetus, even to save the life of the mother. And so this is the question that Philip Foot was looking at, because the Church also says that if a pregnant woman has uterine cancer, it is okay to do a hysterectomy on the patient, even though it will have the secondary effect of putting an end to the life of the fetus. And they rely on St. Thomas's principle of double effect. And that's sort of what the original Philip Foot article was about the application of the principle of double effect to the question of abortion. And so it really does get into the same kind of trolley dilemma. That, are you going to, if you accept the Church's position that killing a fetus is killing a person, are you going to allow that morally, taboo act to happen? And according to the Church's philosophy, it depends on whether you're doing it as sort of a secondary effect of doing something good for the patient, or whether you're doing it, primarily to end the life of the fetus in order to save the life of the mother.
So that help me. So the Church says you can't kill a fetus, even to save the life of the mother? But if the mother has a hysterectomy and it kills the fetus, that's okay?
You're removing
an obstacle.
You're performing a hysterectomy to save the mother, and as a side thing, you kill a fetus. This seems to you.
It seems to me a difference without. Am I missing? I went to
well,
good Catholic school
Dame,
and all this other stuff. I seem to be missing something. I don't see the morally relevant difference between killing the fetus in order to save the life of the mother and killing the fetus in saving the life of the mother.
Yeah, you're not alone. In fact, some wags say, well, if you want to get an abortion, your best shot is to develop cancer of the uterus. Many people don't see a relevant moral distinction. But what they would say is that you're trying to save the life of the mother, just like you're trying to save the life of the 5 children. Unfortunately, that has the effect of killing the fetus, and therefore you didn't intend that if you could do it without.
I see. The killing the fetus is not instrumental to saving the life of the mother. John, you wanted to say
that's right. Yeah.
See now, I'm never very clear about moral issues, but
I've noticed, John.
in the abortion case, and thinking about the Catholic Church, it's important to make a distinction. I think the Catholic Church has two questionable but not obviously false views here. One is that a fetus, that is something in the fairly early stages, or an embryo, is a person.
Right.
And you might deny that, but still think that in the later stages, the last 3 months, if you're kind of a Roe versus Wade Supreme Court thing, you think the situation's changed by then. There you have something that's, recognizably person-like. And so then this objection or this distinction between killing this child, this person, to save the mother, and killing the child and having the child die as a side effect of some procedure designed to save the mother, I think is probably significant. Removing the whole uterus is one thing, but if you have other operations that will probably save the mother but may put the child at risk, I think we'd be inclined to see something to the Catholic Church's position.
I think you're right about that. Look, I never dissed the Catholic Church. We've got a caller, Jack in San Mateo, who has an interesting question. What's your question, Jack in San Mateo?
Hey, thanks. This is a non-fetus question, but
that's all right.
I was just curious, what would you do if the guy on the track was your dad? Like, would you throw the switch? Would you still throw the switch?
What would you do, Jack? Jack, that's you.
Oh, what would I do?
Yeah.
What would you do? Come on.
What would you do?
I totally wouldn't do it. I mean, that's kind of why I'm calling, because I would do it for sure if it wasn't my dad.
So
I would if it.
How many children would we have to put on the track, Jack, before you throw the switch and kill your dad?
How many?
Yeah, like 1 million would you throw? I mean, of course, it'd be a pretty big trolley that could kill 1 million children. But isn't there some number such that you'd sacrifice your dad to save that many innocent, adorable children?
I don't know. I mean, if I don't know any of the children, I don't know. It seems to be different for me.
Well, Jack, I don't want to put you on the spot anymore. I'm going to put Tom on the spot. What does moral theory or what does science or what does anything tell Jack he ought to do?
Maybe we should ask you how you feel about your dad to start with.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question too, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I think Nietzsche has some light to shed on this. I think it comes down, one factor, in this equilibrium that we're trying to reach here, is that you don't want to not be self-affirming. That's a moral principle too. You don't want, to just do a calculus and, let the chips fall where they may. You have to have some affirmation of self, and affirmation of your relatives is very closely related to affirmation of self. So it's not. I think there's not just a psychological difference if it's your relative or even your next door neighbor. There's also a moral element to it too. I think that we can't just become robots. We have to make some allowance. For the strong feelings that we have.
So I just mentioned to Jack and others that find that question interesting, there's a classic paper by John Turek, that's Daurek, called Do the Numbers Count?, which is a classic objection to utilitarianism. He considers the case in which you've got the boat and the oar, and there's three people drowning to your left and 2 people drowning to your right, but the 2 people drowning to your right are your kids or your nephews, and he thinks it would be grotesque not to save your own kin. There's a big literature about that.
Look, I want to add something to that, though, following up on that. Look, I think we started out thinking that moral theories ought to explain our intuitions. We talked about how these intuitions don't seem obviously consistent, and then there's this desperate search for a principle, like the principle of double effect. Here's a skeptical thought. I don't know what you, Tom, or you, John, think about the skeptical thought. There is no correct moral theory. There is no theory that's going to save these and make these all consistent and coherent. The brain is just this evolved mess. It's got this visceral reaction to one kind of thing. It's got this abstract characterization of this other kind of thing. It's got this propensity to confabulate and try to find principles that justify itself. If I'm pulled in this way and that way and I'm a confabulator, I'll come up with some confabulated principle, but don't really believe any of it gets at anything deeply true. It just, we're just a mess. Our brain and our evolved psychology is just a mess. What do you think of that?
John? I'd like to punt.
Yeah. Well, I think what do I think about that? Well, I think yes, our intuitions are probably a bit of a mess, and some of them, though, I mean, I tend to be a bit of a Humean here. That is, we have this slender reed on which morality hangs, which is a kind of innate but not very powerful sense of altruism that it's up to society to nourish, or I should say sympathy is his word. And some of our intuitions have to do with that, and those are the ones we should learn to pay attention to. We can each adopt a morally consistent theory, although consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds, and moral inconsistency is something that can kind of lead us astray. Whether there's one consistent theory, that there's knock-down, drag-out, absolutely clear arguments that should be the right moral theory, I guess I agree with what you're suggesting, Ken. Probably not.
Well, that's a profound and depressing thought. Tom, on that profound and depressing thought, I'm going to thank you for joining us. It's been a great conversation.
Oh, thank you, guys. This is great.
Our guest has been Thomas Cathcart. He's author of The Trolley Problem, or Would You Throw the Fat Guy Off the Bridge? A Philosophical Conundrum. So, John, last thoughts? What are you thinking?
My last thoughts are that I made a wise decision when I didn't go into moral theory, right, which would involve, reading Kant, which actually I'm starting to do more of now that I'm in retirement and I'm old. I can kind of identify with him. And thinking about these really difficult things. Now, I think what you and I think about a lot, like what's the difference between a proper name, an abbreviation, and an indexical, it's probably just as difficult, but it doesn't tie into emotions in the same way. So I guess as a bit of a chicken-hearted philosopher, this conversation kind of makes me happy I made that chicken-hearted decision about what to specialize in.
There you go. Well, on that note, I'm going to say that this conversation continues. It's already started on our blog, theblog.philosophytalk.org, where our motto is cogito ergo blogo, I think, therefore I blog. You can also follow our tweets on Twitter and find out more by visiting our very, very active Facebook page.
So now let's leave the station on the fastest trolley, driven by Ian Scholes, the 60-second philosopher.
Ian Scholes. When I was 10 or so, my friends and I would play a game called Would You Rather, as in, would you rather break an arm or a leg? Would you rather be blind or deaf? Would you rather be rolled down a hill on a barrel lined with railroad spikes, or have bamboo shoots thrust under your fingernails? These related to our larger discussions, such as who was cooler, Audie Murphy or Jock Mahoney? Which are better, westerns or army movies? Would you rather be bit by a vampire or a werewolf? Later, after we became older and more sophisticated and we discovered marijuana, we'd graduate to brain teasers like what if cavemen had had machine guns? Why don't we have blue food? In the spirit of questioning, I began to question all the things I've been told as a child. Do early birds really get worms? Will horses led to water really not drink? How close is an inch to a mile to a blind horse, really? Now, you can talk about Plato's cave all you want, but you will not find the answers to these questions in those shadows. But the questions seem to come from the same place as the thought experiments so beloved of philosophers and physicists. Though some philosophers have mixed feelings about thought experiments, sometimes I do as well. If we lived in a world where these thought experiments were real, we'd have a tough time of it. Take John Searle's Chinese Room. Someone who knows only English sits alone in a room following instructions for placing strings of Chinese characters so that outside the room it looks like the person in the room understands Chinese. Nobody knows the difference. It makes me wonder, why not just put somebody in that room who knows Chinese? It would solve so many problems. On the other hand, in thought experiment world, how could you tell if the guy knew Chinese even if he did? In reality, it could be an illusion created by theoretical experience machines. And how will we know if there's even an eye to experience the illusion? Thought experiment world is a world where we might suddenly wake up in a hospital wired to machines keeping a world-famous musician alive, but only if we choose. A world where the hotel rooms are infinite and always full, but you can always get a room by making everybody just move over one. A world where if you've been teleported from planet to planet, or been struck by lightning, or your cells removed and replaced one by one, you are still you. On the other hand, if your car is old and all the parts replaced with new parts, so there's a whole new car and the old parts have been used to make another car, which car is your car? And who's asking? It's a slippery world in which neurologists, raised in black and white rooms, discover color for the first time, in which the formerly blind are asked to look at cubes to see if they know what they are. A world of ticking time bombs, possibly radioactive cats in boxes, monkeys and typewriters, rabbits and turtles, and arrows that never reach their targets. In thought experiment world, if the teacher announces there will be a surprise quiz, will you really be surprised when it's popped? What about the problem before us, the trolley problem? I find myself asking, how did all those kids get on the track? Isn't there any adult supervision in thought experiment world? And why does the guy on the track have to be fat? Just to stop the trolley? Couldn't he be Iron Man or the Hulk? And couldn't we have a helicopter come in and swoop the kids up just before the trolley hits them? But wait, you say, where did you get a helicopter? Well, same place you got the trolley, I guess. I gotta go.
Philosophy Talk is a presentation of Ben Manila Productions and of the trustees of Leland Stanford Junior University, copyright 2013.
Our executive producer is David Demarest.
The program is produced by Devin Strolovich. Laura McGuire is our director of research.
Our director of marketing is Dave Millar. Gorilla Kreitmar is our performance consultant.
Thanks also to Chris Hoff, Merle Kessler, Jimmy Tobin, and Mark Stone.
Support for Philosophy Talk comes from various groups at Stanford University, the Friends of Philosophy Talk,
and the members of KALW San Francisco, where our program originates.
The views expressed or misexpressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of Stanford University or of our other funders, not even when they're true and reasonable.
The conversation continues on our website, philosophytalk.org. I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. Thank you for listening.
And thank you for thinking.
At 7:30 a.m., an express train traveling 60 miles an hour leaves Santa Fe bound for Phoenix, 520 miles away.
Visualize it, Bert.